very typical Indian mindset where when the kid falls and they get hurt, parents start slapping the floor and they keep saying, floor ki whatever, tippy tippy karo, mitti mitti karo, and whatever else they use as colloquial. But they're essentially training the kid to say when you screw up, it's someone else's fault, and it's okay to be blaming that blame on someone else and not take it on yourself. And I find that disturbing.
For parenting tips, celebrity interviews, recipes, conversations with experts, DIYs, and lots more. Subscribe to Kidsstoppress now. Like I said, big fangirl moment. So really honored and humbled that you're doing this for us. Like I mentioned, I really wanted pullback view of someone who works with a lot of young people in this country and a father. So thank you so much, and I can't wait to get all those answers जो आपको कभी किसी ने नहीं पूछे हैं.
Thank you so much, Mansi. Thanks for having me. And it's such a joy to be sharing my side of being a parent and the joys that it brings to one's life. So
I always believe, Ankur, that we're all somewhere a product of our childhood, right? Those little things and moments that happen, that kind of, even 30 years later or 40 years later, they're really well etched in your mind. And what were those moments for you that shaped you?
several of them, I don't think I'll be able to do justice to all of them in meaningful ways. But if I were to reflect upon them, Mansi, there were these very large dimensions of childhood that just continued to stay. For example, we had a very tough childhood from a financial perspective. My dad made some choices which were risky and unfortunately did not pan out, and because of that, we were perpetually in debt. So just living, the four of us, which is mom, dad, my younger sister, and myself, and this navigating through life without any money, hand to mouth existence, that always made me hate money while growing up. But what I love, and this is serendipitous, I don't think I can claim any credit for it, is that hate towards money made me go beyond money as against chase money. And that's who I am today, where I do recognize that money is important, but it's never going to define my life or what I do. And that's thankfully stayed that way. And the other one was just the sacrifices that parents made, that despite all the hardships that we had, they sent my sister and I to great schools. They gave us all the love. We were just happy with the fact that we had less. And somehow it just got us all together and made us appreciate the finer things in life, whatever is it that came along. And third was just my set of friends. So I went to a all boys school. And I think because of that, I just saw one side of the gender very deep and very up close. And that made me appreciate them and understand the male psyche in a lot better way than most people do. And then I had a bunch of really awesome friends back home that just shaped up the way that I became as an individual as well. So I feel in general, the absence of money, the appreciation for less, the fact that there were always people who were around you supporting you for what you were doing, that gave me a lot more wisdom than I would have got if I were to just do it on my own.
Right. I can now completely relate to your post a lot more because I know that that ability to help and connect is now so seamless. You also mentioned in one of your posts that your mom said when you didn't get into IIT and you said IIT was my stepping stone to the US, and your mom said it's okay, you'll still make it to the US. And I feel in many ways and now from the times that we were growing up, where there was a lot of scarcity of things, or things were in restriction if not abundance, or apportioned, right, if I may say, not restricted. तब से लेके to now, where there is so much of abundance, our kids are not learning to handle failure very effectively, or the grit to to rebuild, to lose, to start from scratch if you've lost something. It's like building Lego blocks, and then the blocks collapse because your friend came and hit it, and you go whining and crying, and then you come back and build it. We had that innate ability as children, but we don't see that anymore. What made you build that rejection from IIT to where you reached, And how are you ensuring that back with your kids?
That's a terrific question. So I really don't know, Mansi, where it came from. I think it was just in that moment, my mom saying that, hey, not everyone who goes to the US goes to IIT. So that does mean that even if you don't go to the IITs, you can still make it to the US. And I was like, yeah, that's a fact. It's not some hobnob, random positivity. This is actually a factual statement, which is giving me hope and optimism. And I took it like that. And then I just made sure that I kept working towards that. I was always this ambitious kid. At least back then, ambition for me was go to the US, join NASA, become a space scientist, show to the world how awesome I am. Ambition has a very different definition for me today. But back then, everything that I was driven by was just escaping the orbit that we were born in. And I genuinely felt that this would be my um, middle finger of sorts to the world and to the fate that was delivered to me in some way that I was born into. I think that that's what drove me. But you're so right, Mansi, that in today's world where there is abundance, there is lack of appreciation for the finer things in life. Kids have it very, very different. But if I were to take the blame onto myself, I genuinely believe that the blame squarely and squarely rests on parents and not kids. Kids are not born to reject failure and to dismiss it. They are born to face failures. That's who they are. In the first 1 to 2 years, they would fall down and they would get up again. And the last or the best that they would do would just cry for a few seconds and then move on in life. But we over time begin to teach them that it's okay because you have other things that you can be distracted by. It's okay that this toy doesn't work because you have another one. It's okay if this book has gotten torn because there's another one. And all of that is just the doing of parents. It's not the doing of kids choosing to do so. And what you then ultimately do is habituate them to a certain way of living with life. And then it's really hard to undo that. So by the time a kid is 5, 6, 7, they've gone through series of such affirmations, if you will, which are constantly telling them that the world's a bigger place and they have so many more opportunities and they can always go and do all that they can. And what if there is one failure? You just move on and move on and move on. But they never really taught how to deal with failure in a way that provokes them, challenges them, to the extent even scares them. Here's what we do. And I think a large part of this, Mansi, I don't know what your point of view on this is, but I feel that having the right partner with the right mindset is so important in parenting because a parent by just oneself cannot do this. It's virtually impossible. And that's why I have the deepest respect for single parents because they have such a hard task in front of them. And it's never going to be easy as such because kids do want both the sides to come in and see what the world has to offer collectively and wholesome. Um, so I'm very blessed that I have a partner that sees eye to eye with how I see the world, and she sees the world the same way that I do. And that is very easy for us because then our parents are like, if somebody falls, it's no one to be blamed; it's just you. And counter that to very typical Indian mindset where when the kid falls and they get hurt, parents start slapping the floor and they keep saying, floor ki whatever, tippy tippy karo, mitti mitti karo, and whatever else they use as colloquial. But they essentially training the kid to say, when you screw up, it's someone else's fault, and it's okay to be blaming that blame on someone else and not take it on yourself. And I find that disturbing to say the least. So there are these chodu things that we do, which is you have to take ownership of all your actions. You're responsible for all your actions, no one else to be blamed. Don't ever complain. They go to a fancy school, they grow up in privilege, but they're always reminded of where they come from and the privileges they sit on. So our way of parenting is not to withdraw the privileges that they were born into, but to continue having them in your life, but always be mindful of that. Don't ever think that you have worked hard enough to get to this point. No, you were just born lucky, and that's what you were born in. So don't take that any seriously, and don't take yourself seriously by virtue of that.
Right. So beautifully put. When you mentioned about not to take away those privileges and to teach them, that innate ability to keep that alive. With the abundance of so much, how do you ensure that that's still thriving with creativity and it's a new toy with something that already exists, and the joy of creating something out of like a block or a pen or a mat. How do you create that keep that creativity alive in your children?
The answer to that, Mansi, would be to create a sense of scarcity, as dictatorial as that sounds, but that's the approach that we follow. We grew up in scarce environments, and we believe that that shaped us meaningfully, and we want to replicate that same environment. So, to give you an example, every year when they have their birthday party, and then they're inundated with gifts from all possible sources and all possible economic value, they get to only open one of them. And the way that we do that is they get to open all of them, and then they choose which one would they want to play with. And just like Singapore has the exact same number of cars flying on the roads and everyone has to get a license to buy a new one, that's the same thing we do with our toys as well. You can't get one more toy just because you want one. The number of toys that you will play with will exactly be the same number. So you have to give away a toy to someone who wants that toy for you to get another one. And it'll only happen in periods of time, right? So you get an opportunity. Hey, do you want another toy? And if yes, then you have to give one away. And that's just one simple example of how we create that scarcity. Vidur, who's our elder son, he's age 10. He loves reading books, but we don't go flipping buying books. He's subscribed to a library, and at any point of time, he just gets to take 4 books. So now it's his call whether he wants to get 16 books in a month. He has to read them all in 1 month, or if he just is a slow reader and can only read 4, then that's what he will get. But he's not going to get the quote unquote joy of buying another book that he wants to just because he has access to it. So we have the privilege that, yeah, it's an expensive library and we're paying a lot of money for you to get access to that, and you don't perhaps even know the economic value of that, but there is scarcity designed in your life that you only get 4 books at a time. And that's the way that we do it. So there are multiple such cases and examples that we use to bring in that scarcity in their life, so that they always appreciate what is it that they have, and not think that it's endless or limitless.
Ravi, you speak so much of self love, which I think is extremely, extremely important, especially in a world that is quite cynical, especially with our kids growing up on social media, where a large part of their validation comes from social media. How are you teaching your children to, or how do you recommend parents teach children to accept criticism and self love? Because self love, I feel like, comes in phases and it goes in phases, right? It's not a practice.
I think it stems from two things. One is, what did they grow up on? For example, if Vidur or Uzma are two kids, they do a good job, we can either say, oh my God, you are so awesome, you're so brilliant, you are so blessed, you're so gifted. Or we could say, that was a job well done. That was something that you executed well. That was something that was thought through. Both are forms of appreciation, but one, in my opinion, leads to a very disillusioned sense of self worth, and the other one is always helping you reflect. So, unfortunately, the answer to this question is, if you've been playing the latter, where you're constantly making your kid feel as if they are God's gift to mankind, you have gone down a path which will be very, very hard to undo. You can still try, and I'm sure that it will work, but it will take significantly more effort than it would have if you started much earlier. If you're a parent already and an early one at that, or you are a to be parent, my strong suggestion and advice for you would be, always lay emphasis on appreciating the task as against appreciating the self. The self needs to understand that it's their actions and their decisions that lead to outcomes, not their inherent ability or innate talent, which always needs to be groomed. Once they get to this point where they really understand themselves, and this is something that I hold true to myself, it's who I am, and it's what we would love our kids to also realize, that if you truly know your own self, then no one can touch you. If I were to tell you, hey, Mansi, your yellow hair looks lovely on you, you'd be like, I don't have yellow hair. So what are you talking about? But if I say, hey, Mansi, you're looking fat, you may take offense at that, because there is an iota of doubt in your head, which is, oh my God, have I really put on fat? Have I really put on weight? Have I really bulged? And and if you knew how to dissociate fact from possibility, then nothing will touch you. So if you know for a fact that you are absolutely comfortable with who you are physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, socially, then no one will be able to ever touch you. But if you have a very poor or basic intermediate understanding of who you are, and that's largely driven by the world's imposition on you and they have constantly told you you are, it will automatically lead to issues with self-love. So I think it's all how our understanding of our own selves behaves. And I remember like Widor often would get into, say, a fight with his friends or feel really bad about something, and he would cry. He's a very sensitive child. And I'll always encourage him to ask this question: why do you think you're feeling bad? Why do you think, like, there's no point in feeling anger towards someone, there's no point feeling even bad. I would want you to grieve, I would want you to express your emotions, but don't just express them without asking, why are you feeling what you're feeling? Because when you go down this journey, you will realize something about you that you perhaps don't know already, or it will just help you consolidate something that you know about yourself and it's just happening again. And it's amazing how kids are more than willing to answer these questions, but they're never asked. And that's true for
Right.
almost all of us. If we're not surrounded by people who ask the right questions, we will always be chasing the wrong answers.
Right. Which is so interesting, and somewhere it brings me, and a question that we keep getting asked on Kidsstoppress time and again. Parenting has become a very time-consuming task and process. Um, so, do you feel like you are being able to give that time, and it's literally like, we get questions like, oh, mom, I need help with this, and you're like, okay, keep that down right now, I'm busy, I'm on a call or I'm on a phone or whatever, right? And you've already shunned that child once, you've shunned that child twice. How do you manage um, keeping that curiosity and the creativity alive for that child while um, while managing that time piece?
There are three elements to it. One is, of course, dedicated time. It never harms for you to actually allocate family time and to make sure that that is the time when you're spending with your kids uninterrupted, and that is their time with you and your time with them. But that has practical limitations, and there will be occasions several times during the day when they just need you in that moment and you might be busy. And in that case, it is important how you react. So, reaction one: I'm busy, don't disturb me. Reaction two: I'm sure what you want from me is important, I can't attend to you right now. Can you give me 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, however much time you need, and I will come to you and address you? Again, it's a no from both sides, but the way that you're putting that no is making sure that kids recognize that they can't just play spoil sport by commanding attention from someone and getting it instantaneously, because that's wrong again. There has to be scarcity built into their life. And at the same time, you're being respectful of their needs, treating them like an adult and saying, I can't attend to you right now, but is it okay if I do attend to you when I can? And I feel that that is something, again, kids begin to appreciate over time, and they see that. That's personally what I follow. I'm not a big fan of reacting every time kids reach out. I tell this often to Ruchi as well. Don't always reply when kids call out our names, because quite often they might be just calling out our names to get our attention and not necessarily our help. And if we keep reacting to every time they call out our name, we are drugging them into believing that that is how life works. That's not how life works. That's not how it should work. So let's just react to it when we understand what is it that they need from us. And that becomes their responsibility to express. And if they do a good job, which they should, then we have to be respectful of their need, also of our current commitment, and find a balance between those two.
That's so well said. Tell me, Ankur, you're working with so many young individuals today. If you have to think, and you're, obviously helping them with career choices, training, what do you really think will be the three or four core skills for the 21st century kids? Like, what are those three or four values that you're like, if my kids have this, I'm sorted?
we we have three for our kids, and it's written on their walls, and these are the three values that we would love. Number one is respect, and that is respect for everyone, irrespective of where they come from, how they look, how they behave, how much they earn, where they come from, how they speak. It is your duty to respect others. It is your responsibility to command respect from others and not let anyone come in the way of either of these two. Second is ownership. You are the owner of your decisions, no one else. So you have to bear the responsibility of your actions. If you are playing and you fall down, that's not anyone else's fault. It's not even yours, but you have to bear the responsibility of that. If you're doing something that you you wanted to do and ultimately it ends up being something that you didn't desire, that's okay. Shit will happen, but you need to take responsibility towards that. So that's the second value, which is ownership. And the third value is zero tolerance to mediocrity. And mediocrity is not about glorifying perfectionism or glorifying achievement or glorifying success. It is about, do you know that you could have given more than what you did to this task, to whatever that task is, whether it's even sleeping or brushing your teeth or taking a bath or your homework or whatever else? There should be zero tolerance to mediocrity. You may not be in control of your success or your failure, but you're definitely in control of how much you bring to the table when you assign that task. And these are the three things that we care about. We know for a fact, and this is after we went through a series of all possible values that we could have them consider, right from honesty to respect for elders and whatnot. And we arrived at these three, and we are very clear that if these three are upheld, then we frankly couldn't care what they do in life, how well they are financially or otherwise, how are they received in society, and so on, because I think that they will bring the best of what they have to offer. They'll always be accountable for the decisions that they take, and they will be respectful towards others and command respect at their end.
I must say that I actually thought of these questions the first time I was asked to fill a school form, and that's the time me and my husband said, "Oh my God, we need to actually put these and carve them in stone because we both need to agree on this and not have two extremely different values. Otherwise, we'll be raising different humans altogether." So completely agree with you on the respect and the others as well. Tell me, do your when you're teaching all these values to your kids, they have a very short attention span. Even when I find it a struggle, even when I'm teaching them to build something or to make something or read or playing with them, and I'm telling them, "Acha nahi, aise karo," because we want our kids to somewhere do it fast, do it better, do it right. You built a successful company, you built a successful career as a coach, and of course with parenting. Is there literally like a playbook to how you're teaching them without being preachy and pedantic? Because that's not what I feel these kids really have the attention span for.
No, you can't teach kids. You have to coach them. Um, Teaching is something that they would hate, and then schools do such a terrible job, which is why, not surprise, schools are disastrous for kids' creativity. They learn a lot by observation. So I just feel that for any parent to have their kids adopt and respect any value that you would want them to, you first have to become the ambassador of that value. I'm not a believer on sitting down kids and saying, hey, okay, value one, let's go through this today, and this is the moral science class. No, this is about, but here are the values. If you ever want to access them again, it's up on the wall so that it never gets missed. But we are going to just imbibe them through action every single day, and you will feel that in every bit of the air that you live and breathe in.
Right. You just mentioned that schools are a playground for disaster of creativity. You have to speak on that. What do you think fosters creativity?
Letting kids be. I think it's just the best form of it. We have a very prescribed sense of what achievement in school means, and that often means marks, and that often means science as math. But creativity manifests itself into multiple ways. It could be creativity through arts, could be creativity through numbers, could be creativity through painting, could be creativity through science, anything at all. And it's just tragic that school has this curriculum that got designed in the Industrial Revolution to just make sure that factories were running cheaper and more efficiently. And that's what we've continued to follow ever since. I remember when we were picking up a school, it was like it was actually depressing for me. It was just so sad that every school that we went to, it just reminded us of just a breakdown of process, actually, of even having a vision for kids of the future. Um, so there is a school which you may be aware of called the Synthesis School. It's an outcome of Ad Astra, which was the school that
Yes.
Anna and Elon Musk co-designed for
Yes.
Elon Musk's kids. Um, and I was just waiting for Wither to get ready to join that school. I don't know what will happen with that school, but he seems to be enjoying it. Like the first class was play this video game, but we don't tell you how it's to be played. And I like, wow, that is brilliant. I love this video game already, and I love this class already because everyone will tell you the rules of the game,
Yeah.
and then what are they doing? They're just boxing you. So you're just becoming better and better at playing the game by the rules of the game. But that is not creativity. That is clinical adherence. Creativity is when you're given a absolutely white campus and canvas, sorry, and you're like, just create whatever you can out of this. It could be science, could be art, could be music, could be whatnot, and kids don't experience that. So I even the school that they go to, while it's a great school, but it's not nearly what I would want it to be.
Right. Tell me, if you had to give five toys to your children that fosters creativity and works on the premise that you define creativity with, what would those be? I'm just curious.
They already have that. A cardboard box or dozens of cardboard boxes that come from Amazon deliveries, colors, water as well as crayons, scissor, sellotape, and a scale or a ruler.
Also, very very quickly, um, you're obviously in front of a screen a whole long days with your lives, with the content that you create, and parents struggle with explaining digital and social for good to their children and their hours, right? And an innate question is, agar aap kar sakte hain to main kyun nahi kar sakta? How do you answer that question to your children?
Um, it, it's tough because you're you're playing the rules of the game by the rules that have been decided, so you can't suddenly have another rule for your kids, and that's why it is hard. And I don't blame anyone who's in that situation. Thankfully, we consciously chose not to play that game when we did decide a year and a half back to lead a very different life, and both my wife and I, we don't spend an inordinate amount of time in front of the screen. We do what we have to do early morning, and they see our lives like that. We have our meals, we have our books, we have, of course, our screen time and everything that we have to. We don't watch television, so they don't watch television. We don't have a television at home. We love reading books, so they love reading books. We love reading it on the Kindle, so Vidur's got one and he's enjoying himself on that Kindle, which is great. So I feel the screen is not a bad thing as long as it was not hurting your eyes. The content is what needs to be filtered and made sure that it goes down the right way. At least I am democratic around that. That we would allow him to consume content in a scarce manner, which is time constrained. He can choose to watch what he wants as long as we're aware of what he's watching, and he will make his own choices going along. Um, and it's very well understood that what we have to do in front of the screen is work just as they have to do in front of the books or in front of their screen for an online school right now. So that agreement and understanding is well established. But for someone who's spending an insane amount of time just working and now has to reconcile with their kids of why they can do it but the kids can't, I I, I don't envy them.
Again, question that comes to mind is, how difficult is it for you as a parent? And I know Oprah asked this question to Michelle Obama, that you want to, how difficult is it as a parent to know that your child is making a mistake, walking into a glass wall, going to hurt themselves, but you're not stopping them? Are you going to be that parent?
Oh, I wouldn't stop them at all. I wouldn't stop them at all. Both of us wouldn't. Which is why I said it's awesome that both of us see the world the same way. We wouldn't stop them from going towards failure, even if it's inevitable, because that's the best way of learning, as long as we make sure that they have a way of reflecting upon it. Of course, if it's danger, that's very different. But if it's failure, if it's a fall, then like that's perfectly fine. It's totally okay. What will we do protecting them?
Right. Tell me mistakes you made as a son, and now you don't want to repeat that as a parent, or mistakes that your parents made that you're ensuring that you're not repeating that with your kids.
I think the biggest mistake that I made as a son or as a child was just assuming that parents are always right and they are godlike, so they are not humans. When the truth is that they are just as well. So they will also make mistakes. That they will also fumble. That they will also have their weaknesses. They will also have their inadequacies, and that's totally okay. That's being part of a human's life. So I always, for the longest time, saw them as just people who can't be wrong. That they also have their own weaknesses. They also will make mistakes. They also have their own inadequacies. And the big mistake was that I looked at them for the longest time as just people who are perfect and wouldn't make any mistakes. And that I think was just unfair on them, and also gave me a very false sense of what parenting or parents in general should be.
Right. Very quickly, we're going to ask you a few one-word answers before we conclude, and let's see how you fare, Ankur. One word you want to erase from your dictionary as a parent.
Don't.
One word you want to add to the dictionary when it comes to parenting.
Why?
Raising a child in the pandemic feels like.
Fun.
Okay. One 21st century skill you wouldn't trade for anything.
Storytelling.
Okay. Self love is important more than ever before because.
It is a reflection of your understanding of your own self.
Okay. One thing kids say that you can't stand.
Nothing, frankly.
Okay. The one thing you and your wife fight about the most as parents, of course.
Don't attend to them whenever they call out our names.
Okay. Give a few teen lingos or early young adult lingos that your son uses, and you're like, dude, what's that?
OPOG.
What's that?
Oh, you don't know?
No.
O- OP is on point, but in gaming parlance, OP is also overpowering. So you have a stronger
Okay.
opponent, and OG is original
Okay.
gangster.
Okay. Okay. You're quite woke, uncle. I must say that to you. I hope you're up to date with that one.
Totally
Okay. Current parenting mood is like you're more relaxed or you're hyper, you're like going with the
relaxed, very
flow.
relaxed.
Okay. One toy your kids could never live without and you overindulged in.
None, frankly. There was never a favorite toy or something that just became a part of their life.
You know, we all have these as parents, right? हमको लगता है नहीं ये तो is okay because this my child is learning with this, right? Or growing with this, and then like all love, all love. So none of those happened to you.
No, books. That was the only thing.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Words that describe you as a parent.
Uh, understanding and reflective.
Okay. One memory of your childhood that sadly your children will never experience.
So many of them. Sitting, standing in a line outside Mother Dairy, which, by the way, you also would not know of because the Mother Dairy is just a thing in North India.
Yeah,
But standing in
yeah,
line to just buy milk for
yeah.
hours,
Your go-to person when life just doesn't seem like a happy place.
my wife.
Okay. Who's the good cop and who's the bad one between the two of you all?
I think we use these roles interchangeably.
Okay. One skill you aren't able, you really wish you could teach your kids through the pandemic, but you haven't been successful.
And I think the pandemic has been really good for all of us. So we did what we intended to.
Okay. Three books that shaped you as an individual.
Oh, me. I remember reading The Fountainhead when I was really young, and that shaped me meaningfully. But then much later on, another book was Rework. which I continue
Yes,
to gift as many times as I can. And a recent book that I feel is a very powerful book is Atomic Habits.
right. So we're both James Clear fans now. Ankur, thank you so much. This has been incredible. And I know why you are who you are, because the amount of clarity that you have is commendable. Thank you so much for chatting with me today, and look forward to connecting with you again.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Mansi. Thanks for all the thoughtful questions. Made me reflect quite intensely. And all the best with your journey.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
For parenting tips, celebrity interviews, recipes, conversations with experts, DIYs, and lots more. Subscribe to Kidsstoppress now.